The missiles are flying everywhere, the bombs are dropping, World War III has started, tanks are rolling everywhere, guns blazing, the army's coming in. Are you protected? Is your family safe? Where can you go to save yourself from World War III? As the Nomad Capitalist tax guy, the only thing I can think of is my wealth going to be safe if World War III breaks out? Is my family going to be safe? Are my dogs going to be safe? So ultimately, the Nomad Capitalist lifestyle and having a Nomad Capitalist plan is also about safety. It's also about having a place to run if things turn sideways and if you have 24 hours to leave, or even less. Think about Tom Cruise in War of the Worlds. You got to leave this house in 60 seconds. Well, you better be ready to leave the country in 60 seconds in certain occasions, right? So let's talk a little bit about asset protection. Let's talk about neutral jurisdictions from a geopolitical standpoint, and let's talk about survival tactics. Being from Venezuela myself, I've had to apply some of these survival tactics. Trust me, I've been through everything. Week-long blackouts, food shortages, fuel shortages, capital controls, being on the brink of civil war, coup d'etats. I've seen everything, and I'm not even 30 years old, for God's sakes. So I can tell you that a good, well-formed out, multi-jurisdictional plan, like the ones that are offered at Nomad Capitalist, can help you survive through the dark ages, can help you survive through the darkest of times. When all else fails, your plan will protect you. So let's dive right in. Geopolitically neutral jurisdictions for banking, asset protection, passports, and so forth. So the first thing I would think of if World War III breaks out, like it potentially might, is I really want to be able to have a travel document that is as neutral as possible. So where would I look for such a neutral travel document? I think these days, Latin America might be an interesting choice for you to look for that travel document. The Caribbean Citizenship by Investment programs might also be quite interesting. Whether you're on one side or the other, I bet you want your gold, your Bitcoin, and your millions of dollars stored somewhere that doesn't take sides so that the bombs are not falling on the banks that are storing your money, on the vaults that are storing your gold, and the safety deposit box where you have your cold storage wallet. So trust me when I tell you, regardless of whether you're on side A or side B, you want to store your wealth in a neutral jurisdiction. Now, if we go over to Latin America, as I was telling you before, I think Uruguay might be a very interesting option. If you have a family, Uruguay offers a faster path to citizenship. Some of my colleagues on the immigration side could talk to you more about that, but they also have a great tax deal, a lot of incentives if you know how to play around with them. But Uruguay has a really all-encompassing great option, which is become a tax resident of Uruguay. You get 11 years tax-free, a tax-free holiday on all of your foreign source income. And we've seen a lot of our clients essentially through the survival tactic mission mode buy land in Uruguay and essentially have a self-sustaining farm, access to fresh water, being able to have their own crops to an extent, having livestock, and ultimately creating their own self-sustaining compound or community to ride out World War III. You can do that in Uruguay. I think it's a great alternative. Most likely Uruguay will not be involved in any type of conflict. I doubt that any fighting will take place in the deep parts of South America should that happen, but definitely an interesting place to look into. For some of our crypto people, we've occasionally looked at Paraguay. Paraguay is an interesting place. It does have a territorial tax system, not as favorable or as well established as Uruguay's or Panama's, but still a territorial tax system with a lot of advantages. So essentially, foreign source income is not taxable in Paraguay. You see a lot of people, the crypto people, going down there. Electricity's cheap. If you're mining, that might be an interesting option. It's more of an up-and-coming place, but you know what? If it's World War III, I bet you want somewhere a bit more isolated, a bit more secluded, and somewhere that helps really protect your integrity, both physically and financially. So Uruguay could be an ultimate, escape route, something like, you have a safe house, something like that in Paraguay, and you can definitely have that option there. Further to the north, I think potentially Costa Rica might be an option. Now, you guys know I love Panama, which is right next door, but the reason why I don't want to include Panama in this list is the Panama Canal. If World War III breaks out, I tell you, the Panama Canal is going to be strategic and troops are going to be moving in under the treaties that govern essentially the administration of the Panama Canal. The U.S. has to intervene militarily to ensure the neutrality of the Panama Canal if it ever were to be threatened. So I can envision a lot of military conflicts going on in the Panama Canal if World War III breaks out. And even though I love Panama City, it wouldn't necessarily be the safest place. Maybe some of the rural areas in Panama, you do have a situation in Panama whereby you drive a couple of minutes outside the city and you're in the jungle. So maybe a self-sustaining compound there. You have all the tax favorability. You could be living in Panama City and have your bug out strategy and have like a self-sustaining farm or a tree house somewhere. You could wait out and ride out the apocalypse in luxury. Maybe that could be an option. But I do see Costa Rica as maybe the ultimate plan B in Central America. An interesting place, doesn't even have a military. I don't see the necessity maybe for the troops of the major powers of the world to go through Costa Rica as I do see it in Panama. So I do think Costa Rica could be an interesting option for those of you looking for survival options more like in the wilderness, quote unquote. Most of our clients going to Costa Rica are not going to San Jose, the capital. They're going to other places that are safer, other places that are more secluded and more nature oriented. So Latin America, very interesting. In the Caribbean, you've got all the citizenship by investment program islands. Those are very interesting. So similar to Uruguay, Paraguay, and Costa Rica that have great and excellent residence programs that you can keep essentially in your back pockets, different types of visas and residence permits. These Caribbean islands are very immigration friendly, but they take it one step further. They actually allow you to obtain citizenship. So here you would be traveling with a neutral citizenship from a geopolitical standpoint, which helps you a lot during armed conflicts and allows you a larger degree of freedom of movement, which can be excellent. But in addition to that, all these islands that you find in the Caribbean are pretty neutral. So once again, they are secluded, they are neutral. You can be there, you can have a compound there, more island living, you're isolated. Again, could be an interesting place to escape World War III. If you're looking at options in the South Pacific, you've got Nauru and Vanuatu. Those are two citizenship by investment programs. One of them is fairly new. One of them has been around for a while. Listen, we rarely recommend them. It is something that is really for specific people who are maybe collecting their fourth or fifth passport, or people who have a very specific interest in the region. But if we're talking safety, I bet it is very difficult for somebody to beat the safety that an isolated place like Nauru or Vanuatu can offer. So both of these places have citizenship by investment. You can essentially get the passport by donating an amount of money, $100,000 and $130,000 if I'm not mistaken, respectively for Nauru and Vanuatu. However, again, please do refer to my immigration colleagues for more specific details on that. But if I'm talking survival, in the event of World War III, it wouldn't be a bad idea to be in Vanuatu, essentially. So why not take that into consideration? When we're talking about global financial infrastructure, I think it's important to be able to move money around the world easily. So obviously, if you're in crypto, being able to move your crypto around the world is not going to be as challenging as moving your fiat currency around the world. But I think in these scenarios, especially if you envision to do a lot of cross-border transactions, or you're somebody who regularly is in that situation, then I believe having a banking flag in the West and a banking flag in the East and maybe a banking flag that is in the middle could be very beneficial to make sure that your business remains operational, to make sure that your finances remain intact in the event of a World War III type scenario. Which also brings me to the fact that incorporating your country in one of these neutral jurisdictions can also be very beneficial to make sure that you're able to do business with multiple parties during an armed conflict, if that's what you want to do. You can also abstain from doing business with any parties involved in armed conflicts, and if that is your thing, do your thing. Listen, I'm not encouraging anybody to engage in war profiteering or to engage in any type of activity that is involved with doing business in conflict zones or anything of that nature. But what I am saying is you want to keep your options open. What I am saying is, maybe you have clients in certain parts of the world, clients that are not responsible for the actions of their governments or the militaries of their countries, and you want to stay in touch with them and you want to be able to service them, potentially help them in the event that your product is necessary for them to potentially even evacuate or relocate to a safer area. So all of these considerations are extremely important. So ultimately, what is the final message? When the bombs drop, when the tanks start rolling, when the bullets are in the air, it'll be too late. You need to have a plan now. You need to have a plan that involves a second and third passport. You need to have a plan that involves backup residencies. You need to have a plan that involves bank accounts around the world and that involves safe storage for your gold and for your crypto. So, if you want to talk about survival strategies, if you want to talk about how a nomad capitalist plan, a multi-jurisdictional approach, can help keep you and your loved ones safe during World War III, go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply. We'll be more than happy to help. Drop a comment down below if you think World War III is coming, or if not, also let us know in the comments down below. Hit subscribe, follow this YouTube channel, follow us on Instagram, and I'll see you, hopefully before the war breaks out, in the next video.